Well, welcome to the podcast, to the Power to Speak podcast, Ollie Mansfield. And you like to describe yourself as the optimistic cellist or optimistic musician. So
either's fine, but the optimism, that's the key bit.
Yeah, fabulous. So I know in lockdown, Ollie, you have been, you've kind of, that huge word of pivot, we've all pivoted somehow in lockdown. So tell us a little bit about what you've been up to in lockdown, because I think it's quite special, really.
Yeah, so like with a lot of musicians, there was a March, it was over a couple of weeks that everything got cancelled. And it was the first time that I ever had a diary that was completely snow white. There was nothing in it. And, it was really stressful and a bit panicky and very frightening, as it was for all of us. And so I kind of thought, well, there's always something in me that has to do something productive to keep moving forward. So I knew that a lot of people in other areas, whether it's PT or coaching or anything, had used Facebook Live to do talks and demonstrations and things. And I thought, well, you know what? You can totally keep performing using Facebook Live. So I thought, well, look, it's cheap. I don't have to. I've already got the technology. You don't have to pay anything to set up a Facebook group, right? I'm going to set up a Facebook group. I'm just going to see what happens. And I called it Front Room Concerts. And what I did from then on was each Thursday, a musician performed each week, and the group started at naught, and it ended up at being just over 2,500 people in the group.
Wow.
And each week people donated to the performers, and it was just my way of, one, keeping my mind focused on doing something productive instead of going a bit but most importantly, it was showing my friends and colleagues that there is still a way to perform and share your music.
Yeah.
And before this, I would have been I was a complete tech phobe and would not be interested in music technology and microphones or anything like that. But it's amazing when you're put in an environment where it's either sink or swim.
Yeah.
And for me, I've got to swim and I've got to do it. So, yeah. And I've learned a huge amount from that experience. And there's been huge successes and then huge frustrations with it. And the frustrations have led me on to a path of learning to where I am at the moment.
Yeah. Oh, that's an amazing story. I mean, yes, we've all had to adapt and diversify and, do all these sort of things. Because like you, I was working in venues and in spaces, teaching and running workshops and things like that. And so and schools as well, as soon as lockdown hit, was it. Work dried up for me completely. But yeah, I thought I can't sit still. Well, first of all, probably like you, I thought it was only going to last about 3 months and, everything would be exactly as it was before. Little did we know. But yeah, it's finding something to occupy yourself. Like I was saying to you earlier, I met online an actress who runs a theatre company, and they transferred all their stuff online and are doing amazing work. And she was saying that actually it was more about the well-being of the actors and keeping them busy and keeping their morale up by continuing to perform. That was, that was more important than anything else, really.
Well, yeah, totally. And that's what I was experiencing with. I mean, at first, when I came up with the idea and I approached some friends and colleagues about performing, again, they had that feeling that it's only going to be a couple of months. So I'll just hold out. It's only going to be a couple of months. And because I teach at a higher education institution as well, they were definitely planning in their process that this is definitely was lasting till the autumn,
right,
at least.
Yeah.
And so I could see in my mind, no, this is going to carry on for a lot longer. So I'm just so grateful to the people that initially did join me on my crazy sort of path in doing some live streams. And the feedback I've had from all the performers is actually just thank you, because it's given them the focus to prepare and practice and just fulfill their purpose of wanting to be a musician and to share their musicianship with an audience.
Yeah.
So, and then through the donations, we gave a percentage to Help Musicians, the charity, because I just thought it's important that we, we're all in this together, that we help and support. But yeah, that well-being and that helping people to just keep going and fulfill their purpose, I think it's something I feel really strongly about in helping others.
Yeah, no, I think that's amazing. And the other thing as well that I think has come out of this, and the fact that we are now doing so much entertainment and all the sort of the culture that we're used to going out for, we are now doing on screen. But it's kind of opened up the world in lots of ways. For me and what I do, I'm suddenly dealing with people in the States or Australia or wherever. Have you found that as well?
Yeah, so I have found, like through front room concerts, we had performers from Ireland and Turkey and Brazil. And so it was an amazing way to, as you said, just start broadening those connections across the world. And we had viewers in from all over the world as well, America, Iceland, I think India, that is incredibly special. From my own personal experience now so when I lived in London, I loved going to the Old Vic Theatre and seeing productions there. And I live in Hastings on the south coast, and I have 2 very small children, and so that's not feasible to do anymore. What's interesting is I had an email from the Old Vic saying, you can book for productions, and some of them, they are live streaming as well as having it in person. And actually, I want to have that option as a consumer now. I want to, for all sorts of arts now, is I kind of expect to be able to also have the option to watch online.
Yeah.
Now we've had that experience. And I think that's going to be the case for what the data is saying through audience agencies, is that's going to be quite a high percentage. 50-60% of audiences are going to want that option. So I think it's incredibly exciting to help broaden and open up audiences, whether that's in the UK or around the world. I think there's some exciting potential there.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think this is ever going to go away now that we've discovered it. I don't think it is. I mean, we know each other from a screen. We've never met in person, but we know each other through the You Are the Media network, which I used to go to live beforehand, because I'm local to where they're based in Poole. We used to go to Southbourne down here on the coast, this side. But now I'm talking to people in the Zoom room from that network that are all over the country. Yeah. And so when they have their first in live again, beginning of July in Poole, it'll be a shame really, because there'll be some of that network that I've got to know quite well that won't be able to make it because it's not on their doorstep.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be one of those people that are going to be online, watching it online. Yeah. And this is going to be the interesting part is hybrid events.
Yes.
And how that works and what that's going to be like. And it's I mean, I think if we all put the hat on that we're all experimenting here, and if we share what works and what doesn't, then we've all got scope to learn and develop together and create something special. I mean, being part of the You Are the Media group, because I stumbled upon it through, I think I read John Aspirian's book.
Right. And
in the back of that, there's Mark's Masters LinkedIn, go and connect with him. So I connected with him and then found out about You Are the Media. And so I've learned a huge amount and was on the month of learning with you. And I think Mark has been incredible at just playing around with online and seeing what works or not. And yeah, I mean, there are so many people that I've met through that I've never met in person.
Yeah.
But that sense of the You Are the Media community and that we all share things together, I think is really powerful.
Yeah.
And I think, and this is where I think musicians and other people in creative can learn from people in different industries at how they're creating communities, how they're engaging, how they're bringing people together to feel like they're part of something, and that it can be done online and offline. And I think there is going to be this magic thing where you will be able to bring them both together.
Yeah.
I'm not sure totally what that looks like, because as I said, we're all in the throes of experimenting.
Yeah.
I think it's definitely worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm before lockdown and before all this happened, I used to go to networking events because I had to.
Yeah.
And I used to hate that thing of introducing yourself or doing your 60-second pitch or whatever you had to do, and then spending the rest of the time with the person next to you trying to sell you what it is that they do, and coming out going, oh God, this just isn't me. This isn't me. But actually in lockdown, it's become so much more creative, and that's what I'm all about. I love, just the problem solving side of creativity, that kind of innovation that comes from having issues and problems that need solving. And so now I'm finding networking quite exciting, because I find breakout rooms really intimate. I find it's a whole other world, and for me it feels very creative.
Well, and I think also, I mean, for me, I've not done so many networking events locally, and I think because, again, for me, I do find the thought of it quite daunting, actually. And again, it's an interesting thing with me about my own identity and business and musician and creativity and what that all means. But what I think has been fascinating for me is, through You Are the Media and a few other things I've gotten involved in, is actually meeting people from different industries and seeing how solicitors think about their communication, or people in the wire industry, or people that sell photocopiers, and it has been fun being in breakout rooms and discussing, because actually the common themes are actually all very similar in sort of communicating and messaging and wanting to bring people with you. And I think what I've really enjoyed is breaking out of my little musician's bubble, actually, and just having a broader vision, actually, and seeing what people are doing.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, I hadn't really sort of thought of that, because again, from an acting background, it is a kind of a little bubble. You don't really meet people that make valves. I mean, who you knew that there were people that made valves? So yeah, that's been an eye-opener. So I assume you will carry on then. I mean, you're not going to go back to a normality that doesn't now include your Facebook group.
Well, so I have passed the Facebook group on to another musician who's started his own studio, just because I was finding, I've got a little boy who's 3, I've got a nearly 5-month girl. We're in the thralls of young children, and so my time is pretty limited. So what I want to do is help more musicians with building their audience and setting things up so they can perform successfully online. So that's what I'm sort of diverting my attention to, whilst also I'm still doing some cello teaching up in London, and I'm freelancing as well and doing some freelance playing. So it's a bit of a juggle. But I love to have that mixture, and I love to have that variety. So for me, it's having worked online and developing online and developing my own audience online, is that sticking, that because I'm really enjoying it. I'm really enjoying learning about how you build an audience and develop it. I'm really enjoying the creating part. Doing a weekly email and a weekly blog post. I'm someone who loves learning. I love learning new skills. And I find it fascinating. And the same thing you said about problem solving. So through front room concerts, one of the issues with it was someone could perform and earn £1,000 in donations, and someone could perform and earn nothing in donations. And I was just like, well, what is that about? Like, what's causing that?
Yeah.
Because it's either like, whoa, wow, this is even better, for income wise than performing in person. And for some people, it can be quite frustrating and quite demoralizing. So it's that's led me through looking at sort of how you build your online audience. And it's amazing how a lot of it doesn't necessarily to do with talent or necessarily being the best musician, but the musicians that have done well pivoting online are the ones that already had a following already. And
Right.
and the ones that have struggled haven't had that following and that support beforehand.
Yeah.
So and it's something that isn't through my music college and conservatoire training, was never ever talked about ever. It was just I don't know what it's like for acting and things like that, but it was just you honed your craft with this kind of naive expectation that there will always be an audience there to receive it.
Yeah. You don't have to try, just perform.
Yeah, exactly. And there'll be an audience there. And of course, if you're freelancing and someone's booking you, like for orchestral gigs and things like that, then it's whoever's booked you job to pull in the audience. So again, you never really have to think about it. But this performing online is now you are responsible for having your own audience. So you've got to have you've got to know that there are going to definitely be people there that are going to watch your performance. Otherwise, it's going to be a bit disappointing.
Yes. Well, that's interesting, actually, because I was going to say to you, what is the difference then between having 1,000 in your audience or having none? And it is obviously exactly as you say. If a musician comes to perform and they don't have any kind of community of their own, then it's very difficult to get from that standing start.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, like it can be easy to, again, through Facebook sponsored ads and things, that you need thousands of people following you. Or I think I saw a book about how to get 1 million followers in 30 days. And what I've come to at the moment is just finding the smallest number of people you need to build that audience to make it happen for you.
Yeah.
So, for instance, if you have expenses and you want to get paid, and that adds up to £300, then, and you sell online tickets for £10, then you only need 30 people. And suddenly 30 people is much more doable and more intimate, and you can build those relationships compared to thinking you've got to get thousands of followers. And so that's where I am with it at the moment. It's about finding that more intimate connection with people, and look, I really need it as well, is to feel part of a community, to feel like I belong somewhere.
Yeah.
And I think everyone's craving to just communicate and feel connected and belong somewhere after this very long experience we're having.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose people are used to being in one place, so they work somewhere, they are part of a local community, whereas we've all kind of been thrown out there into social media world. And there are many people, myself included, that I wasn't worried about followers. Why do I need followers? I'd go and work at the school, I'd go and work at the venue, and as you say, it was their job to get me an audience. So now I am worried about followers, and how do I build that community? And as you say, it's very important. People want to feel part of something, feel part of a community. Yeah. So I kind of threw you straight in there as soon as we started, we were off. Right, what are you doing? Let's go back. Let's go back and find out, how did you end up playing the cello? What was it in your childhood that got you to that?
So I laugh because it is not very deep or profound at all. So I hear stories of cellists that heard the Elgar cello concerto or some Bach, and they knew it was for them. Alas for me, it was a woman came in and played the Pink Panther, the Flintstones, and Jaws. And that was me. That was me sold. I was like, I know the Flintstones. I know Pink Panther. Jaws sounds really cool. I want to play that. And that's what got me hooked and inspired. Just because they were cartoons I knew of and recognized the tune. And as my parents recollect, I wasn't very good at sport. That was my younger brother's thing. So they thought, and my family isn't musical at all, and they thought, well, let's give it a go and see what happens. And it's my thing. It's what I do. And I've just been incredibly obsessed and passionate and love playing the cello ever since. So it's not deep, it's not profound, but it must have struck some sort of chord.
Because you carried on. I mean, so many kids, I don't think I actually ever really played an instrument, actually. But I did ballet and tap and all those sort of things. It lasted, 6 months maybe.
Yeah.
What was it about the cello that made you carry on?
So interesting, yeah, because I think it was about 12 I started off with. I was in year 3 primary school, and I think there were about 12 of us. And you're right, they slowly drop off. And I think I was the only one left in my group after about 3-4 years. What was it? One, I am incredibly stubborn. So I think that is one part, is once I've decided I'm doing something, that's what I'm doing and nothing's going to stop me. So I think part stubbornness, other part is like, it became part of who I was, my identity. I do remember seeing friends and they'd either read big, huge, fat books, but I that wasn't for me. And people were either really sporty and other people were really good at doing Lego, and everyone seemed to have something they were really good at. And so I think for me, was I really good at the cello? No, not back then, but it was my thing that I did. And so I think that for me, that gave me my thing as a kid. And then, especially when I was 12, I joined Brighton Youth Orchestra and got involved in more musical activities at secondary school. And then it became my social thing. And then I started listening to more classical music, and with my teenage hormones, these deep, romantic Russian music really resonated, and I knew from about 14 that's kind of what I wanted to do, and that was my thing.
Yeah. So then that sent you off from school to where? Where did you go from?
So I was at secondary school in Brighton, and then I was really fortunate. I had some people come in to do chamber coaching from London, and one of them was an amazing pianist called Louisa Breen, and she's now in Australia. And she said, well, I think I said to her, look, I want to be a professional cellist. And she said, you should play to this woman called Sue Lowe. And she does a cello course at Eton. And so she gave me the details, and I told my mum, and bless my mum, she'd never driven on the motorway at all. But she was determined for me to have this experience. So she drove me up from Brighton to to meet Sue Lowe at Eton for her cello course, and we were there for a day, and it was like the blinds had been opened, because suddenly I was hearing these amazing cellists. I didn't realize the cello could be played so well. I was hearing pieces I'd never heard before. I was hearing teaching in a way that I'd never experienced. And so each Easter I would go to that course, and I ended up doing going to sixth form in a place called Lewis, and that had a really good music course. And I studied with a fantastic cellist called Alison Moncrief Kelly, and she got me ready to audition for music college. And so I ended up going on to study at Birmingham Conservatoire, and I got a scholarship there, and that was all going great-ish. And then it got to my end of my 4 years of undergrad, and I realized that I still couldn't play the cello, or I still couldn't play it professionally.
Right.
And I thought, I'm going to have to do something about this, because this is something I want to do. And the level of my playing and what I was able to do, I just knew wasn't good enough. So I ended up phoning Sue Lowe up, who I met when I was 16, and saying, Sue, have you got any space to take me on, because I'm in trouble here? And she did. And it was one of the best decisions I've made, because we started from scratch, and she helped me just solve all sorts of physical, technical issues, but also creative communication issues. And I can now play the cello, and I can teach the cello, and I love, I feel confident going out and performing and playing to people. So that's kind of my up and down journey of becoming
That's
a cellist.
amazing. So if you got to the point where you thought, I can't play professionally because you didn't feel good enough, or
yeah. So I mean, like the final recital mark I got and everything was, indicating, it was a 2-1. Everything was saying, everything's in a good place. But I knew deep down that if I was going to play professionally or an audition, I wouldn't get a looking, because I was aware that there were cellists far, far better than me. And so there was that part. But do you know what? Just deep down, I knew that I knew what I wanted to express in my playing, and it wasn't coming through. It was like there was a block.
Yeah.
And in fact, I'd say that's getting a bit emotional here. I'd say around 16, I had ideas of how I wanted to play and how I sounded, and it just wasn't coming out. And so with Sue, I mean, she's a phenomenal teacher. She lives up in Yorkshire, and she's really down to earth, so caring, but also just very honest about how things are. And I studied with her. It was 2 years into studying with her, and I remember the day I played something, and she said, "Now you're communicating. Now you're saying something." And to hear that frustration was released, and it was, I'd say, a life-changing experience. And for someone who is deeply creative, to finally hear someone else saying, "Yeah, I can hear what you're trying to communicate now,"
That's amazing. It's giving me goosebumps.
is incredibly powerful. Yeah. So it's taught me a lot about beliefs and my own beliefs and how they can help and limit, and I'm still going through a whole journey on through that as well. But yeah, so it was a bumpy road to becoming a professional musician. And I am just so grateful to Sue and her family, who her 2 sons are cellists as well, and they have all helped me immensely. And I am just so incredibly grateful for their help.
So what would you recommend any sort of young people out there that are, maybe still in primary school, still haven't even, got to that point where they're even thinking about playing professionally, but what would you recommend that they do to sort of fulfill, find that creativity in themselves?
Yeah. So I this is a big topic as well, because we are, with my 3-year-old, we're starting to look at infant school, and we're realizing where we are that there isn't as much creativity in primary schools as we would like. And where I teach at a couple of private schools, and there is a huge amount of creativity going on, and there is this huge gap between the experiences children are having in the arts in primary school. So what would I say is you've got to help your children have those experiences. And I think what me and my wife are realizing is at the moment we're going to have to provide those experiences for my little boy, and so that means taking advantage of local authority music lessons. You know, I started learning with East Sussex Music Service, and it is an amazing way to start. And then to get involved in groups and ensembles, because it starts becoming social.
Yeah.
And there are actually, if you do have to go and explore them, but there are fantastic discounts and free tickets to music and events. And I think it's just to go and just try things out, give things a go.
Yeah.
Just if it's just for once, and see if it's something you want to do or not.
Yeah.
And I'm really passionate because I could be with my little boy, right, he's going to do the cello because I do the cello and I can teach him, and he's going to do classical music, but you know, I'm not doing that. I have a little cello that's out and he plays along with me sometimes, but I'm not pushing it, and we're giving him some dance experience, and I want him to just go and experience as many different things early on, so then he can begin to find his way on what he wants to do creatively.
Yeah.
So my advice is to look what's happening in your local area, and then go and take part and experience. And if you like it, continue with it. If not, see what else there is.
Yeah. And do you think it's important to see other people performing? I mean, you know, for me as an actor, to go and see, as a child, to go and see anything. I mean, it was kind of where I grew up. There wasn't much, you know. I was North London, so to go to the West End, the local theatres weren't great at that point. So I didn't really see a lot of theatre. But you know, I think now looking back on it, it's really important to take young people to see any kind of performance.
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, the role of online and, you know, YouTube is an amazing thing. And I've got students that are saying, yeah, I YouTubed and I've watched the 2 cellos and they've done a Star Wars and it's great, a Star Wars cello video, and it's great. And, you know, even just that is amazing to start off with, because then you can go off in all sorts of directions with watching performers. For me, as a kid, I remember we did get some free tickets to see Julian Lloyd Webber at the Brighton with Brighton Philharmonic Orchestra. But at the primary school age, I honestly did find it quite dull and long and tiresome. What I found more inspiring was actually with Brighton Youth Orchestra. I was in the lower level orchestra. What I found inspiring when I first joined was seeing the older orchestra.
Yeah.
And seeing, oh, okay, that's what I can do in a few years' time.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, yeah, get out and see different things. But also, I think it's even more powerful if you can look at, if your children can look at other people they know or people a bit older and see what they're doing. Because I think then it's closer to see that it's possible.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, very exciting. You know, I don't get me started on creativity in schools.
Yeah.
It's just so difficult. Have you ever watched Ken Robinson on his TED Talk? Creativity?
Yes, yeah, and I've read a number of books, and you know what? It's his book on parenting in schools. I can't remember the exact title, but it did calm me when I first realised that by the end of this year, we've got to have made our choices for primary school. And you know, as someone who's passionate about education and music, and of course, every parent wants the best for their child. It can, for me, I've worked in schools for over 10 years, it can feel quite, or for me, it felt very like, oh, this is a huge decision. And actually, I don't know what the best decision is. But actually, since reading his book and going through it, it's actually, there is always choice.
Yes.
And if it doesn't work out somewhere else, then you can move to somewhere else. And actually, it's not the be all and end all.
Yes.
And just keep opening up opportunities.
Yeah, and that's the other thing, isn't it, about for me, creativity in schools, and why I'd like some parts of these podcasts to be about talking about creativity, so that young people realize they don't have to decide now. what they're going to be doing in 30 or 40 years time. It's organic. You could, you can change your mind, not set in stone. And I think school is so rigid sometimes.
Yes.
And they have to tick all those boxes before they can leave or get that exam or that certification. And actually that's not what's important. What's important is just being themselves and finding their own way.
Well, and this is the thing, and I'm sort of, this last year has been fascinating for me, and I've been sort of out of my comfort zone, is going into sort of digital marketing, content marketing side of things, is to be learning through books, through groups like You Are the Media, through highly respected individuals with their emails, and not doing a higher education course or getting the certificate, or is to go, do you know what, it is possible to learn. And also I'm learning so much from implementing and doing things myself. And I sort of, it's to prove to me that the more important thing is how you approach your own learning and how you approach developing skills, and that you can still achieve without getting the certificate. And I think in my deep philosophy for life, and what I want to share for my children, is it's how you approach learning and creativity and creating something. That's the important part.
Yes, absolutely. So what was life like then for you as a musician before lockdown?
Yeah, so for me, I was doing a lot of teaching, and doing a mixture of chamber music and orchestral music, freelance. So, and then for me, I kind of always wanted to do more recitals and more solo stuff, and kind of wanted to have more agency over what I wanted to do, actually, performing wise. And so actually I found that through performing on, doing some Facebook Lives and performing on frontman concerts, is actually, there is that ability to go, okay, I can choose what I'm going to play, and I can set it up the way I want. And also I think what opens up is, through performing online, is you can vary the format. So I think a lot of us, including me, stuck to the traditional recital format where you sort of, you're here, you play, you bow, you finish.
But
actually online, that doesn't work. And actually it's the engagement side that I think is really exciting from online performing, and whether it's Facebook Lives and seeing the comments and responding to them, or on Zoom and you can see the people. I mean, when at the end of the month of learning to play the Bach to you guys, it was just amazing. It still felt like a real performance, actually, because I could see you all and I still had the same nerves, and it was amazing to read and see the reactions after. And so it's what I think what's changed before and after is actually what I see is the possibility to be a musician and have more control and more choice about what you want to play and how you want to do it. And then alongside that is the importance of audience and building those relationships and that engagement, so that you know that what you create can have an impact.
So in a way, you get the opportunity to be your own boss. So and the type of performer you want to be. Because I would imagine being part of an orchestra. When I see orchestras on the TV, I've been to a couple of orchestral concerts, but not that very many. But there's so many people on the stage that it must feel like you're just like a little tiny cog in this huge wheel. And so you don't have much control over what's going on around.
Exactly. And you can feel that sometimes your voice just gets yeah, sort of drowned out in the big sound. And especially if you have that purpose, that drive inside of you, if that you've got something to say and you want people to hear it, then if you're only doing orchestral stuff, that can get pretty frustrating.
Yeah.
So I think now we're at a time where the musicians that have something deep they want to say and want to share with their music, now you can, and you don't have to get the approval of people that promoters or venues or trusts, or you don't need to get their approval to start doing that. You can do it now online.
Yeah. Yeah. And you get to be on your own little square and perform the way you want to perform. You know, you can, you say, you can engage, you can speak, you can do all those sort of things. So you're not under that kind of rigid control.
Yeah.
So is there anything else in during lockdown that you've done for yourself? I noticed that you love artisan bakeries and patisseries. Have you
Yes.
indulged much in the last?
So I have, I did a load of sourdough baking, as I think everyone did. But back in 2017, I disappeared off to Scotland for a week and learnt it was a week-long bakery course, because I was kind of dabbling. I was like, do I want to maybe open a micro bakery, anything like that? Anyway, the course looked at the figures and I was like, no way. I love bread and baking, but yeah, it just wouldn't work financially. But so whenever I visit a new area, so I was in Putney on Friday for rehearsal, and I found a lovely little artisan bakery that did amazing. What did I have? Huge cinnamon bun thing. It was lovely. And so I love baking and I love doing it with the kids. And again, I think it's the same with the cello. I love doing things with my hands and creating with my hands, and you can really feel the creation of when you're baking bread and making it, but also that you can just make something so magical from just flour, water, and a bit of salt.
Yeah.
I think it's just amazing.
Yes, I haven't done sourdough. I've taken to sourdough over the last year. So I don't buy other bread.
Yeah.
Just eat sourdough bread. But my daughter has been a vegan for about 2 years, and she's still at home. And so we got into pizza dough. Because obviously, as you say, it's literally flour and water, isn't it?
Yeah.
Really? And that, as you say, it's just that kind of that sort of creation that is just amazing.
It is, and it's that sort of tactile feeling of it. And I think that's why, it's a love playing the cello. Playing the cello is it's this physical thing as well.
Yeah.
As well as everything that happens in the brain and the ears and the mind, is just that it's physical, and I like that.
So what do you think is because obviously you have an interest in the brain and what goes on in our minds, but what do you think what is happening in our brain when we are being creative rather than watching the TV or doing something?
What is happening? A lot of very cool stuff. I think it's just such a big. What do I think?
Sorry, I just threw that one in there.
Yeah, just threw that one in. Do you know what? I honestly, I don't know what is happening, but what I find fascinating is more and more I sort of looked into things about the conscious and the subconscious or the unconscious mind. Is one is letting go of having to control everything and giving space for my mind to just conjure up stuff, whether it's writing content or with the music, is giving myself space for my mind to pop up with ideas or thoughts that I'm not trying to do. It kind of just happens. And I hadn't quite realized recently until the last few months just the importance of having that mental space to be able to do that. And I really believe that even when you're away from doing something, your mind is still creating and developing and working something out. So even like with writing my blogs and weekly email is I'll plan it and then I'll come back to it the next day. But in my mind, I'm confident that my mind has created everything I need to do. So when I can sit down, it'll happen.
Yeah.
And then interestingly, I was thinking about flow more the last couple of days, and what does that really mean to be in flow, and especially creative flow. And I think for me, it's where the sort of self-talk is sort of silenced.
Yeah.
And so I don't even know how to describe it, but things just seem to happen in a very calm, confident, knowing way.
Yeah, it's funny you should say that, because I did watch, because obviously where I do improvisation online now. It's
Cool.
really bizarre.
Yeah.
But obviously I used to do it in venues with people. But I watched a TED talk, because again in lockdown, I was a big fan before, but I've watched a lot since I've been in lockdown. And there's a Dr. Charles Lim did an experiment on the brain between people that were improvising a piece of music and people that were playing a learned piece of music. And he did the same with rappers, people, guys that were rapping. So he put them into a brain MRI, brain scanner, and with the jazz musician, he'd put a keyboard. He made a keyboard to lay across this guy's lap,
right,
and got him to learn a piece which he played, and they looked at his brain, and then they obviously got him to improvise a piece and looked at his brain. And it exactly as you said, what he noticed, so it wasn't a huge research project, but just a small one, but what they found was in the brains that were improvising, it shut down the self-talk. And so that's maybe what the flow is then. It's because we're not, that inner critic is temporarily shut down. So we're not kind of fighting with ourselves.
Yeah, because I've heard about this being in flow, and I used to get really angry and jealous with people that say they're in flow, because I never thought how you could do that or how it was even possible. But in the last few years, getting to a state where you can do that, and sort of experiencing it, and I think it's something that can be practiced, is and also interestingly, I did a gig last Saturday, and I had moments that flowed beautifully, and I had moments where I felt really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And just sort of reflecting on it, those moments where it flowed beautifully was where my inner critic, my self-dialogue, my inner whatever it is, wasn't there. I was just doing it, just creating. And when I was hesitant and nervous and unsure, it's when blah, 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 blah was going on.
Yeah.
So and I think that's a really, I think that study sounds amazing, actually.
Yeah, I'd like to, because now, obviously, with what I do around improvising and the voice and acting coaching, I can say that now, that there is proof that improvisation is good.
Yeah.
It's really good for all of us. It's been brilliant talking to you. Tell us, just before we finish, about the newsletter and how people can get in contact with you.
Yeah. So I do a weekly email, which is the digital recital list, which just looks for musicians at building your audience, performing online, and how that can all work best for you. So you can sign up if you go to my website, olliemansfield.com, and you can find the subscribe part of the website, and you can just subscribe on there, and then every Sunday it pops into your inbox, and it's it's just really lovely to share ideas, and people I talk to share case studies, give examples. So if you're interested in that side of things, sign up.
Yeah, brilliant. And do you have a website?
Yeah, olliemansfield.com.
Fabulous. And so people can find out all about you there.
Yes.
And also, I think that's your Twitter.
That's it. Yes. And then I'm on LinkedIn, so you can find me on LinkedIn as well, and Facebook, and so brilliant. It'd be lovely to connect and say hello to anyone.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's next? What's coming up in the coming weeks?
What's coming up next? So we are going to, well, there's more of my own personal practice and my own creativity. There's writing for the weekly email, and just writing more my own content and sharing what I have to say and thoughts on that. So it's doing doing the work that I talk about, basically. That's what's coming up over the next few weeks. So you can have a look and see what's going on.
Yeah. Any are you in a room with other musicians or an audience anytime soon?
Yeah, so I think in June is the next one of in-person stuff, and then I'm going to start just doing a few bits online as well. So you may see on my Facebook or LinkedIn things come up, so keep an eye out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I might have to see if you might loan me a little bit of music that I can add into this podcast.
Of course, yeah.
That would be marvellous. Because the piece you played at the end of our month of learning at You Are the Media was amazing, lovely.
It's a great honour, and and it's that thing, the power of music, the power of the arts is to bring people together and have those shared experiences. Yeah. So it's just really lovely to give something back in that way.
Totally agree. Well, thank you very, very much for your time.
You're very welcome, Jackie.